All right, today we're going to unpack one of the most ambitious, maybe even audacious, national plans of the 21st century. We're talking about Singapore's massive blueprint to secure its own future, all because it was up against a ticking demographic clock. So let's get right into it.
The whole plan is kind of framed by this really powerful metaphor. A person is like a leaf on a tree. If the leaves fall together, the tree will surely wither. It just perfectly captures this core idea, right? A nation isn't just about its economy or its skyline, it's about its people. And by the early 2010s, Singapore realized its tree was in some serious trouble.
So, what exactly was the problem here? I mean, how did a country famous for its meticulous planning find itself staring down a crisis that, honestly, threatened its very survival? Well, it all comes down to this really dramatic reversal of fortunes.
It's kind of ironic, really. Right after its independence, Singapore's big challenge was, well, too many people. The government was actively trying to control a post-war baby boom. But as we're about to see, that policy was maybe a little too successful, and it led to a complete 180 in their national strategy just a few decades later.
And look, the numbers on this timeline, they tell a pretty stunning story. Back in 1960, the average Singaporean woman had almost 6 kids, 5.76 to be exact. Fast forward to 2012, and that number had just plummeted, down to 1.2. Now, to put that in perspective, you need a rate of 2.1 children just to replace the population. They were way, way below that. The nation was, quite literally, shrinking.
And what does that actually mean for people? Well, the real-world consequence of that free fall was just stark. In 1970, you had about 13.5 working-age adults supporting every single retiree. By 2012, that support system had been cut in half, down to just 6.7. You can see how that social safety net was starting to fray, and fast. Okay, so faced with this reality, the government knew it couldn't just sit back and hope for the best. In 2013, they responded, and they responded with a huge, comprehensive, and pretty controversial plan to re-engineer the entire nation's future.
And this was the official solution, the Population White Paper. But this wasn't just some dusty government document. It was a vision for a bigger, more dynamic, and sustainable Singapore. And the headline number, the one that got everyone talking, was this goal of reaching a population of up to 6.9 million by 2030.
The whole vision driving this plan was really a two-part promise. On one hand, you build a powerhouse economy. That's the vibrant city part. But you do it while also making sure you have an exceptional quality of life, the quality home for everyone. It's about having both, not one or the other.
So, the whole strategy really rested on these 3 foundational pillars. First, strengthen the Singaporean core. Second, create good jobs for Singaporeans. And third, provide a high-quality living environment. The idea was to support local citizens, boost their job prospects, and then build a truly world-class environment all around them. So let's break down how they plan to actually do that.
All right, let's start with that first part of the vision, the vibrant city, and see exactly how the plan aimed to keep Singapore's economic engine humming.
A huge piece of this was about transforming the economy, not just growing it. A key goal was to shift the local workforce into higher-value jobs, specifically what they call PM@T roles. That stands for professionals, managers, executives, and technicians. The big aim here was to boost the number of Singaporean citizens in these skilled jobs from about half the workforce to a full 2/3 by 2030.
But they were also realistic. They knew the local workforce couldn't do it all alone. Now, this wasn't about opening the floodgates. It was a really strategic, carefully managed approach. The plan called for a steady flow of immigrants to supplement local talent, especially in new industries, fill those absolutely critical gaps in areas like healthcare, and ultimately, to become new citizens themselves.
But look, a strong economy is only half the battle, right? To handle a bigger population without everyone feeling cramped and miserable, the plan included some truly massive infrastructure promises. And that brings us to the quality home side of things.
First up, housing. To make sure there were enough homes for everyone and to keep them affordable, the government made this monumental pledge: build a staggering 700,000 new housing units by 2030. Now, to put that in perspective, this wasn't just a small addition. This was a plan to increase the country's entire housing stock by more than 50%. That's huge.
So you've got all these new homes. How do you connect them? Well, you double down on public transport. The plan called for literally doubling the length of the Metro Rail network. We're talking about making Singapore's system comparable in sheer scale to sprawling cities like New York or Tokyo.
And the real goal behind that huge number was actually pretty simple: incredible convenience for everyday people. The promise wasn't just about more tracks on a map. It was about putting 8 out of 10 households within an easy 10-minute walk of a train station.
And finally, to balance all of this concrete and steel, the plan was to weave nature right into the urban landscape. The goal was to make sure that 85% of all residents would live less than a 400-meter stroll from a park. This wasn't just a nice little bonus. It was absolutely central to making Singapore a true city in a garden, even as it got more dense.
So there you have it. The government lays out this multi-billion-dollar blueprint of hardware. We're talking jobs, homes, trains, parks. But the success of the entire project, all of it, really hinged on one final, deeply personal factor: something that couldn't be built or legislated.
Of course, they try to influence that choice. The source material details a whole suite of policies designed to encourage Singaporeans to have more kids. We're talking everything from baby bonuses and getting priority for housing to subsidized childcare. The government was pulling pretty much every financial lever it could find.
And this really gets to the heart of the whole thing. After all the meticulous planning, all the massive investment, the plan's success came down to a deeply personal choice. The government could build this city for a larger population, but it couldn't create the population itself.
And that leaves us with this final, really provocative question. The government can build a world-class city, but can it convince its people to fill it? It's the central question of Singapore's 2030 plan for sure, but it's also a challenge that nations all over the developed world, from Europe to East Asia, are grappling with right now. A lot to think about.